So the end of the legislative session has come and gone, and now we have seen bills signed by Gavin Newsom. You're talking about 15 or so of those, so let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. That is right, as we all knew we would, we found ourselves here at the end of the legislative session, not just the legislative session that's ended. We have also seen bills go through the governor's desk and get signed by Governor Newsom. As far as firearms bills are concerned, we've seen about 15 or so of them. And to walk us through that today, we have brought back the Director of Legislation for CRPA. He's also the host of Firing Line Radio. You can catch him on Saturdays on AM 590 The Answer. That, of course, is Rick Travis. Rick, thanks for being with us today.
Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. So if we can, let's just jump right into this, Rick. We've been advocating against some of this gun control legislature all year. We've been doing all sorts of advocacy pushes. We've been trying to inform people. Give me a 360 on the legislative session as a whole. Now that we've seen the governor, what he's actually signed versus what was proposed at the beginning of the year. What does the whole session end up looking like?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, we push back on all, not just some of the anti-Second Amendment legislation and those that border it. But, you know, our sessions are not often understood by most people in the public. They're not 1 year. They're not for a few months. They're literally 10 months of the year. We have one of the longest sessions, and our sessions are not 1 year, but 2 years. So when you look at it, you have to look at, we just finished the 23-24 session, which cumulatively had over 6,000 bills. 6,000, Kevin. That's more than multiple states combined in the West. So that's one thing that people have to realize. The aggressive nature of the bills just kept bumping up a couple of notches. And part of that is because it's an easy topic to go get on the media. You know, you say, hey, I'm trying to right whatever wrong in society. Maybe not get media coverage. Depends what's going on. Say anything about firearms, gun control, it's automatic. You're going to get in front of the media. So a lot of people on the left like it. A lot of brand new people working in the Capitol are like, hey, this is a no-brainer. It's easy. We can get one up on the boards that we did something. And that's where the argument comes in, because most of these bills don't do anything, or what they do is just make things more complicated for law-abiding citizens.
Well, I've got my notes here, and Jacob, actually, you know what? Let's put all of the descriptions for these bills in the description below. You guys, if you want to follow along and you want to read the descriptions for all the bills that were signed by Newsom, go ahead and check them out in the description below there. But Rick, as I was going through these, I really noticed three different categories that the majority of these bills fell into, and that would be money, which is, I guess, something we can always assume our government has aspirations towards obtaining. You've got the destruction of firearms, and you've got restraining and protective orders. So as far as the destruction of firearms is concerned, you've got AB 2842, AB 2739, and SB 1019, which are basically ensuring the definition of firearms destruction, along with expanding some laws to require destruction of seized firearms. You've also got the money aspect in AB 1252 and SB 965, which create new programs that will require salaries and labor to create the Office of Gun Violence Prevention at the DOJ. And then you've got the bulk of them, which you find pertaining to restraining and protective orders. That's AB 2629, AB 2907, AB 2917, AB 3083, SB 899, and SB 1002, all expanding the power of the court and law enforcement to ban and seize firearms relating to people involved in restraining and protective orders. So I got to ask, because this doesn't exactly seem like the cream of the crop as far as gun control legislation is concerned. Are we looking at political aspirations here? How is it that this is the result that we get this set of 15 or so bills that ends up getting signed after an entire 2 years of legislative sessions?
So I think there's a couple of things. I would disagree. This wasn't the only genres or areas that the far left and the governor went after. They went after a lot of them that we defeated soundly, and we can talk about that. But these are the ones that, honestly, a lot of the ones you had in restraining protective orders, we monitored them. We were watching them. We made appeals. We got them amended down. Same thing would happen with the money bills. I'll talk about destruction of firearms in a second. But in each of those, we attacked them, we opposed them, we worked with our allies, we got them pushed down to where most of these are fixing technicalities. In fact, talking to our legal team, none of these were anything that we could really sue on because they were like small technical changes, Kevin, that while I don't like all of them, they really don't amount to a lot. You know, a lot of these were like, oh, we're going to up the number of years after the window has been tightened, so to speak, on what constituted doing that. As far as destruction of firearms, this is a quirky area. You know, we had 1019, for example, which was Senator Blakespeare's bill. 1019 was designed to finally give a definition of what it means to destroy a firearm. And I know for people that sounds like, Rick, that's pretty basic. But here's why it's not pretty basic, because some people would say, oh, well, it's not destroyed till it's smelted. So therefore, if you haven't smelted it, like literally melted the firearm down, then maybe there's other things we could do with it. And so you had people, departments, cottage industries, and not big ones, small ones, trying to find ways where they could get pieces of a firearm that had been used in a heinous crime, sell them off, do different things. You know, maybe for some people listening, they don't mind having part of something that was used in a heinous crime. Others would like to be notified before they took possession or ownership of that. So a lot of those kinds of bills were designed to stop it. We had some people that were very concerned, said, hey, I kind of make money buying things at this price and selling them at this price because I'm able to buy them from some of these agencies, and this is going to prevent that. Yeah, but that's not really a Second Amendment violation. That's like saying, like, hey, when you go down with a car that has been turned in because it's been in an accident, can't be reinsured, and it's to be destroyed, and somebody trying to throw it to a pick apart. Like, it was kind of like that. But I know there are people that would strongly disagree with that, and that's part of it too. You know, I've got to be able to say what is more important, going after a bill like 1019 or going after the bill package that was designed to set mandatory gun confiscation. And I think if you lined 100 of our folks up, at least 99 of them would say, stop the gun confiscation. If you have some gas left over, go after these. And that's what we did. You know, after fighting those kinds of heinous bills, we went after these bills and tried to get them amended down to they were fairly innocuous.
Well, yeah, and it sounds like that happened a lot here because other than, again, of these bills that were signed, these three categories that it seems like those ones kind of fell into, there were a couple others, one being Assembly Bill 3064, creating a lockbox roster and charging fees to manufacturers, along with Senate Bill 53, requiring residents to securely store firearms when not being carried or readily controlled. Is this kind of the same effect here? I know that we did a lot of coverage on SB 53 and how we got it gutted and amended way down from where the bill actually started.
You can look, we had 100 bills that made it into the arena. Before that even happened, though, going back to the first part of the year, you know, January, February, and I would argue to mid-March is very contentious in the Capitol. There are a lot of bills that are being drafted, written, trying to find co-authors, trying to get them out. And what a lot of our people don't see is we literally knocked out about 40 bills in progress. They never made it to be printed. We were able to get them stopped. Some of those were storage bills. Some of those were more tax bills. There were quite a few things that got knocked out before they ever made it to print. So that's kind of like round one every year. Round two is when they actually make it to print, which is usually where you and I, honestly, Kevin, start making these videos and talking about them. And if you were to look at that, you know, they came into land access issues. And land access issues are issues of where the government tries to play games to keep you from being on public property, to keep you from developing ranges on public property, going hunting on public property, like any kind of act that would be with the Second Amendment and other activities for that matter. You know, and so they had several bills designed to further like tighten their grip on control of public lands and working with a broad range of various groups. We didn't defeat one of four. We defeated all of them, just completely killed them. And it seems that we put a bad taste in some people's mouths and nobody wants to look at that for at least a session, which gives us a couple years to devote those resources to other things. And then we saw, you know, they had not one, but 7 bills to try to restrict our ability to use dogs in hunting and to just kind of remove that and make it so that basically waterfowl hunting, basically upland game bird hunting, and some other uses of dogs would no longer be not only not allowed, Kevin, but you couldn't even have one of the most favorite breeds. I'm partial to it, but had they got their way on a couple of these bills, by the end of the decade, you would not be able to buy or import something like a Labrador Retriever, a German Shorthair Pointer. I mean, that's how far they were trying to stretch themselves. We got all those stopped. And then you look at, next generation bills. They were trying to go with Assembly Bill 262 that we started talking about here, which was, hey, we're going to make it so that we can decide what, how, when, where, and if any kid at any youth camp, be it a religious-based youth camp, a scouting, or something of that sort, a agricultural camp like 4-H, FFA, or a military camp like a JROTC, a Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps camp, or a law enforcement career path like an Explorer camp, that, yeah, you're not going to do that unless you hear it our way. They also tried to take a law that had failed at the local level and make a statewide law that you couldn't advertise anything anywhere dealing with firearms. And we killed both of those bills. And then you got to what we called at CRPA the every gun owner, which was 5 bills, of which 2 you mentioned. And I'm going to go over those. I mean, we first had Portantino come out with Senate Bill 1160 saying, hey, I want to tax you on every firearm you own, no exemptions. You are going to have to pay that tax not just once, but annually to keep them. And we want to know where every one of those firearms were, which was clearly setting up the scheme like we've seen in other countries to be able to confiscate. And we stopped it. And he got so angry that we stopped it so hard and cold that he took that same bill number and made an anti-concealed carry bill, and we stopped it. So for the first time, we stopped the same bill number directed at us, not once, but twice in about a 2-month period. And then we had Gonzalez, who tried to take the firearm safety certificate that you have to have, as you know, Kevin, to purchase a firearm, tried to turn down a license, and we beat that bill up so hard that she finally just dropped it, and it died in chamber, so it didn't ever make it to the governor's desk. Then we had Gibson with 3067 saying, well, the only way we can make sure you're being honest, Kevin, and tell us where your firearms is to turn your insurance agent into our secret police by having them come to your house and saying, where's your firearms? How do you store them? Have you told us all of them? Because if you haven't, and your house burns down, it gets burglarized, some other thing happens that you want to use your insurance, we don't have to pay because you lied to us. And so it was effectively turning them into a quasi law enforcement agency. And then you had the 2 bills that did make it to the governor's desk, which is the Firearm Safety Device Bill of AB 3064 and Portantino's SB 53. When 53 started out, that bill had to store your firearm in one place, your ammo in another place. It had to be in a safe that was approved by the DOJ, which meant all brand new safe purchases for people. You couldn't bring them together, even though 3 different Supreme Courts said that was unconstitutional. We went after that bill. It got amended 4 times, twice in the last week and a half of August of the session. And that bill became like, yeah, I can still, under the current law, I can sleep at night long as the firearm's within arm's control. So like my firearm can be locked, loaded on the nightstand next to me. I can still do that. Like we basically neutered that bill. There's a couple technicalities that our attorneys have looked at, but we're not sure. But 3064 ended up being more a paperwork bill by the time it got done. And there's several areas where our attorneys are going to continue to neuter it. But the damage that these 5 bills collectively presented was pretty much wiped off the map. And then on the hunting side, we had a couple of bills they were trying to get passed. One we did, one we didn't. But this is a pivotal year for us because now we're coming back this next year with multiple bills we're going to try to get across the line. And that's going to start a process. I'm just going to say, hey, it may not happen the first, second, or third year, but just like them, we're going to push every year back until we get them across. That's how bills like the excise tax bill and some of these other draconian bills have been passed in the passes. They run them every year, and that's what we're going to do.
Well, I gotta say, I'm glad that you kind of did that because I think it is important, at least from time to time. I mean, you always want to understand what's ahead of you, the fight that you have in any given moment. But perspective can offer a different way of viewing things. And, we work so hard throughout the year to get rid of all of these bills. And then at the end of the year, we're stuck talking about the ones that got signed. So I can definitely appreciate that perspective. And yeah, if these bills that did get signed, I'm sure that the gun control advocates in Washington, or I'm sorry, not Washington, in Sacramento, are considering that a victory. Perhaps we can also view it as a victory that they are completely watered down from what they originally were. But I was going to ask you also, we're heading into an extremely divisive election, maybe even one that can change the makeup. I don't know how drastically you want to predict of Sacramento. We're looking down the barrel of 2025 legislative session. What are your final thoughts on the 2023-24 legislative session, as well as looking into the future on 25 and 26?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of comments I'll make. I think one of the things that our community has to realize is it's like watching bad sports on ESPN. Sometimes I'm like, you guys are unbelievable. You got trounced, and yet you're out there talking about how great your special team was or whatever. And there's actually people going, yeah. And I'm thinking, you lost by like 30 points. A lot of that is what I'm seeing out of the anti-2A community is they're taking stuff that was like a technical change on a bill. And a technical change is something like, oh, we should have put a period here, a comma there, a semicolon there, and said, yeah, we have to go through, follow this law. That's a technical change. But they're touting that as like, we signed this big bill that it doesn't change anything. It's a bold-faced lie. But they do that so they can fundraise and so they can appear victorious. But I think what we have here is a governor who has ambitions to run the next presidential. I think he's fairly ticked off because he did not see our Vice President Harris being the nominee. He saw himself being able to go into a convention when President Biden stepped out of that picture. He was denied that opportunity. And so he's looking at how to make himself not look anti-us, but also not like he's left the other side. So where he signed and where he didn't sign, because there's some bills he vetoed as well, he's trying to thread a needle. And so that, I think, in a sense, bodes well for us the next couple of years because he doesn't want to leave as a lame duck being clouded too much anti-hunting, anti-Second Amendment with his aspirations. And if you notice, we haven't heard a whole lot about a constitutional amendment that he was all behind. A lot of those things he's ditched and allowed to like fall off, forget about it. Like I never said it. Looking at the elections, we have multiple districts in this state where we could flip things our way. We have lots of candidates that are, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but they're in the farm system. They're coming up for, school boards, local elections. Those people are the people to become your next state assembly members, your next state senators, and move on up the ladder. So we have a lot of those elections are very tight. We have several elections that are tight. We have some dynamics going on in politics in California. There are a couple of different pathways where, no, we will not have the majority control, but the supermajority would cease to exist in one or both houses. It is possible. And when people say, well, what are you looking at? Well, when you're looking at a race that could be decided by as few as a couple thousand votes, you're generally talking either one additional person flipping or one additional person deciding to vote in a tract of homes. Like that's not a big ask, a big push. But that takes our community actually getting their people out to vote. It takes our people like getting in people's faces and say, you don't get to say you didn't vote because when you don't vote, you did vote for the opposition. Like if you want to make sure this stuff doesn't happen, not just in the Second Amendment community, but the First Amendment, the cost of fuel, the ability to buy, anything that your family or you may need. This election's critical to that because literally from my personal perspective, this election decides if we start marching towards socialism and communism or if we stop and we turn around and return to our roots. And that's what's at stake.
Well, we've already seen some promising results with some of these politicians getting primaried, but absolutely something to look forward to. And that really sounds like a glass half full kind of approach to the next couple years of legislation as well. I look forward to going through that with you. Rick, I want to thank you for taking the time and being with us here today.
Always.
Awesome. And guys, if you want to continue and see videos like this, if you want to stay informed on legislation, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. And hey, I don't know if you've seen Rick in person. I personally love seeing Rick in person, which is why he's going to be in person with me here in studio for the general elections. That's right. We did it for the primaries. We're going to do it for the general elections as well. We will be live streaming. We would love for you to be here and be a part of that with us. So be sure to stay tuned for that. We're going to be looking at the presidential race as well as the California races throughout that night. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.